Get started. So this is the meeting of the NCPRD District Advisory Committee. Please be welcome, and I'd like to welcome the members and the visitors and the staff. And today's February 9th. This will be convening obviously by Zoom, and we are now recording. So the Zoom chat is open, I'm told, and that's a place for all messages received from that will actually, during the meeting, will be part of the public record and attached to the meeting summary for this actual meeting. If you'd like to provide public comment during this meeting, please raise your hand when we open the public comment period portion of this meeting. And if you'd like to submit written statements during the meeting, you can put them in the Zoom chat, and we most likely won't be reading them in the meeting. So first order of business is to approve the meeting summaries. And the first one we're going to look at is for January 12th. Seems like a long lifetime ago. And the question is, are there any corrections or additions to the January 12th meeting summary? I did send a little one in to Jessica about some names that were missing, but, oh no, that's on the 20th, never mind. Yes, Joel, go ahead.
Hey, Grover, thanks. Hopefully everyone got to see, I submitted comments that I'd like to see included on the meeting's summary yesterday. I think I'm not speaking for you, Anita. I know you followed up on one piggybacking on that email, but I wanted to make sure at least my comments were presented to the group to be included as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Michael.
And I just wanted to apologize to the group in general for the confusion. Our general practice for taking minutes is to just make notes as everybody has seen in the past. What we were trying to do this time was to capture the comments directly related to the Milwaukee Bay Park discussion, because we were collecting comments to then forward to the NCPRD board. And so it was confusing. Our future practice, even including comments about Concord tonight when you have your discussions, will be kept and put together, but as a separate document to our minutes. But our minutes are not meant to be transcribed or verbatim for all of the business in there. We were trying to just capture those bits that were captured. And my understanding is we even missed a few of those, and apologies for that. But I wanted to provide a little bit of that clarity on why it was different than what you're used to seeing.
Right. And I'm on several other boards in Clackamas County, and we were given a pretty strict directive that too much staff time was being used in putting pristine, perfect minutes together when we're recording the meeting. So that's why we switched to, at the direction of our county exec, to meeting summaries. And this could be an exception if it's comments specifically to be passed on. So that's good. Okay, so by the addition of what Joel added, are there any objections or additions besides that before we, yes, Anita?
Well, if we're going to include the Joel part, I'd like to, as he said, piggyback onto that with that one comment I sent to everybody. Okay,
the Joel and Anita part. Very good. Are there any objections to making those suggested corrections? Seeing none, the summary stands approved. So next, we'll go to January 20th. And that's the one I did send Jessica two very, very minor additions about two names were not listed as far as who were representing different organizations. But other than that, any other corrections, comments, or input? Seeing none, those with the amendment that Jessica said she would put in there, it stands approved. Next item. Concord Project discussion, and I'd like to really clarify, that is, having been in several meetings already, this is the NCPRD Concord project discussion. You can speak about the library, but it's as a as it connects. So we're open for, is our presentation of some sort, Michael, or are we just going to jump in and have people make comments?
No, we included the slides just for reference, but we weren't planning on making a presentation. But there are several staff in the waiting room from both NCPRD and we've got Cindy Becker and Eileen, several others. So if there's questions about any of the particulars, I may ask them to be brought in to those discussions as needed.
Okay. So we are open for, and this is what we get to do best. It's time for everybody to comment or make have questions about the Concord project from an NCPRD perspective. Yes, Anita.
I just want to kick off with a question that's sort of before we get into the stuff. I don't really understand. NCPRD has the park and the community center. Is it BCS that has the library? Who's in charge of the library the way NCPRD is in charge of the community center and the park?
I'd like to answer that. Being on that, I'm on the library board. In 2008, we created, much like we created NCPRD in 1990, the library district, and it has its own funding source, and it does come under BCS, but it has its own advisory board, which I happen to serve on. And in the same way that the Board of County Commissioners serves as our governing board, the BCC serves as the governing board for the library. But there is, and tomorrow night, for those of you who wish to attend, is a subcommittee meeting of that library board. And then a week from tomorrow night will be the official board meeting of that library board, both where a significant part of the conversation will be around Concord from the library perspective. That answer your question, Anita? Thanks. Yes, Ryan, hey.
Hi. Okay, so I'm going to try to make this a little succinct. A lot of thoughts swirling around in my head. So just to get our conversation started, so a few items. I've participated in partnerships with different agencies before in development. I have a few questions. One, and maybe they're not answered this moment, but I think they should be answered at some point. Did the Parks District purchase the land? Is the library going to refund the Parks District for their portion of the land?
There is a transfer. I believe it's and Heather, you may know this better, but I believe it's $300,000.
Okay.
That's for the land consideration, I believe.
Okay, so they're going to pay for their footprint or reimburse the district for their footprint at some value.
Yeah.
And then their facility will be maintained by the library's budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what I think what I'm kind of getting at is, so the district won't be, one district or the library won't be subsidizing the other. There's a pretty nice division there, it sounds like.
In option 3 with the separated facilities, if we are looking at option 1 or 2, where they're tied together, there are the shared common hallways, common bathrooms, other, I think, mechanical shared spaces. And those are right now, I believe, at a 50-50 cost split.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's okay. That's good. I think that's my questions for now. There's a few more brewing, so I might ask a few more later, Grover.
And I'll just add a little more piece on that. And all of the development costs that have gone along so far, they have been kept distinctly separate as far as whose part and whose share and et cetera from the get-go. So thanks for that question.
And wait, just one more question. So it did look like, this is just perception, maybe correct me. It did look like the shared version, the option 1 that we've been, that we created some separate options for, had a lot more district cost to it. And is there a reason for that? Was that because of the the gym, or was that also some additional structural issues?
I'll let Mike handle that one. I could, but go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, it's both of those. So the original full plan, option A, where there was shared space in the community center building that I believe it was around 6 or 8 or 9,000 square feet, I believe. Basically that far wing where it would connect. So there, the rest of it was a lot. There was almost a complete renovation of the interior of the Concord building. So that's the main driver. Now there was, it's still a $4 million price tag for where for the gym that was part of that original cost. But the bulk of the rest of it were the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing upgrades that were needed to tie the two buildings together. And then to do the seismic retrofit as it was originally proposed would require basically going out to the bare brick from the inside and doing the seismic upgrades and then basically rebuilding everything from scratch from the walls in. And that was a lot of the big share of our cost on that original project.
Okay, that makes sense. So it sounds like everything's been thoughtfully divided and kept within their own budgets.
Yeah, for at least 3 to 4 years, it's been quite dutifully kept separate. Yeah.
That
Yes,
makes me
Ben.
happy.
like shared building costs, like how is the site, regardless of like the north corner that's all park, like parking lot, plaza frontage, and utilities, how's that been addressed in the two separate projects and budgeting?
That goes into the operational plans, and I'll be honest, those have not been developed between. Ideally, what we're looking at would be an IGA between NCPRD and the library district to really lay those out. Now, on the build out, that's part of the cost sharing, and so part of our cost, even if we don't have the building connected, so option C, the separated buildings, part of our cost of that project is still sharing the cost of the parking lot and civil work, and then us building the playground and park. The playground and park, I think combined were about $4 million, maybe a little bit more than that. And it was about a total of about $3 million in civil work, of which we would be split at around 1.5.
Can I ask a follow-up question related to that with site work?
Sure.
So there's a lot of grading and earthwork and pathways that would probably go around the library, regardless of if the park went in or not, and all the options like the stairway. Is that captured in the library budget or the park budget?
That's the park budget, NCPRD budget.
Okay, thanks.
And at risk of making a comment, the thing that because I'm on several of these boards, each one of these boards, we look at it that we are representing the people whose money is being spent. That's the taxpayers. And that's what funds the library. That's what funds a good part of NCPRD. And yes, other sources of funds do exist. And it's the same people. The Metro money is from those same people. It's all the same money being collected and put into various projects, but it's the same taxpayers. So I always have a delight to remind us that there isn't the NCPRD budget exclusively. I'm glad we keep it separate so we can see, and there isn't the library budget, and there isn't the Gladstone, but we all, same taxpayers, pay for all of it. Yes, Ryan.
I always goof up this mute
Pardon me?
button. I really appreciate, I wanted to comment on that, Grover. I appreciate that outlook. It is true. It is everybody's funding, but we also have voted for different issues. And I want to make sure that a lot of times I see, and this is something I've seen in 26 years of doing this, parks departments kind of carrying the brunt of subsidizing other areas, police departments, fire departments, libraries. And I although I really appreciate my tax dollars, but I've also would vote to have parks done over something else. And I would like to see that money go to that for sure. So thanks for bringing that up.
Sure. Other comments or questions on the Concord NCPRD project? I do. Go ahead, Mike. I have one following you.
Well, I was just going to remind everybody that we are planning on taking all of these comments, and these will go together with the comments that are received from the task force meeting and from the library board meeting, and all put together and submitted to the NCPRD board of county commissioners. So if there are comments that you wanted to be in public, this is the time to be doing that.
Great. Hello, Deborah. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm always interested to know what exactly are we doing at this meeting? Are we supposed to show any kind of preference for one of those plans?
Well, that's a great question. This is a discussion, and so people can express, and I was actually going to make some comments about some concerns and thoughts I have about the various options that we're dealing with. So please go ahead.
Well, if I were going to express a preference for one of the options, it would be the third one, which is completely separating the library from the community center. The added square footage that the library would get with the combined version is mainly restrooms and halls. So you're not really expanding the library proper. But also previous comments have indicated that if we separate the library from the rest of the project, we can actually start building the library now, that they have the money for it. And since we've been waiting forever to get a new library, that would be my preference.
Thank you, Deborah. Anita.
Yeah, I would like to second that idea of separating the library. I guess most of you know that's my viewpoint, and I've also been getting that input from a number of people. And mainly because, I mean, one of the main reasons is that we could make the library now and the other parts could happen later. And as one person wrote to me, it would really light up the Concord site to get that library going and really anchor the community spirit. And I also think it's really important to keep the library full size and not to discard the sustainability parts of it that were expected to be in the original design, the cross-laminated timber and the radiant heat and some other things like that. I think that the library has a pretty good funding in hand already, and I've been told there are good prospects for additional funding. So that means we could get the full-size library and not have to scale it down. And there is a standard formula for the ratio that's supposedly healthy between population and the size of a library. And obviously, we're going to have population increase around here. So it seems really important to go with the full size according to that formula. So let's see, is there anything else I want to say? I guess that's the main thing. You know, probably also that I'm a big fan of having the park be a high priority and be very well coordinated with the library to function with the library. So I guess that's it.
Thank you, Anita. Deborah, you have more? You're muted, Deborah. There you go.
Okay.
You're up.
One thing that we need to keep into consideration when we're talking about the full size of the library is, do we currently have enough revenue stream coming in from the library district to fully maintain that size of a library? i.e., are we going to have enough money to staff that size of a library? Are we going to have enough to keep the library open with the kind of hours that we have now? So we don't want to go ahead and build a larger library that we can't staff or is shut down half the time. And because that has happened to libraries around the country. Also, perhaps if we went to a full-size library, it could be designed in such a way that parts of it, like the community room, are closed off and don't need to be staffed all the time. So, but I think we have to really pay attention to the need for staff and just the general resources for maintenance when we think about the size. But still, regardless, I'm very much in favor of separating the library from the community center and having it go ahead.
Thank you, Deborah. Anita again, go ahead.
Yes, in addition to me saying that I want the park to really work well with the library, that's not unique to me. I'm hearing that from other people. And I know Ben is pretty much an expert on that topic as well with his Greenworks design work. And Paul Savas made a couple good points at the meeting recently, saying that we have to narrow it, we have to zero in on a consistent message to give to the BCC at some point. Because if they get mixed messages, they won't be able to decide what steps to go forward. But he also said that maybe we should consider options besides the three that were presented recently. And a two-story library is a possibility. And as Deborah said, you could have parts of it not be open to the public at all times, or parts that don't need a lot of staffing time. And another thing about the freestanding library is it doesn't have to be kind of buried down into the ground the way the option one library is. And that has some advantages, I think. But we could certainly revisit what's the ideal position at the site for putting the library and use some imagination there.
Thank you, Anita. Yes, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Grover. I'd like to this isn't really a library board discussion like meeting. This is a Parks District meeting, but I appreciate the comments made. I do think I encourage the library to make sure that they're building or suggesting the largest possible facility. I use that library too, and 5,000 square feet doesn't sound like a lot to me. I would like to encourage, since this is a district meeting, I like the idea of looking at some other options. The three options left me a little flat. I did like the third option of splitting this up. I do think having a little bit more lines around who's spending what, especially in the climate that I've been feeling, the very passionate climate from constituents. Let's go ahead, and I like the idea of splitting it apart and really focusing our funding on delivering a really top-notch product that we can. And also, because we have such limited park space, making sure that the park designers are being really, really thoughtful about the use of the space and making sure that it provides for the community and we're not cramming a bunch of stuff in to cram it in. So there's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Ben.
Oh, thank you. I'll just echo what Ryan said about the library. I kind of feel like we are a park board, so focusing on the park aspects here, the community center and the library. And I really appreciated Jan's comments in the chat about, what what are the benefits of the park and the community center in these options? If like, it seems like separating them is the financial best option, and how can we leverage that for the park and community center? And I'm going to go back to like the presentation that we were at a few weeks ago that was with the task force. And I made a comment about understanding how the park works and the topography. And the architect from Optus Gym, said that this is like a very kind of simplified, high level graphic, but yet the grades were figured out. And for me, from a designer standpoint, and I imagine you all, it's very complicated, and I would really like to see how the park works, because these are the decisions and what we're going to be faced with. So there's a lot of graphic tools to show us what the park looks like in 3D, and a complicated site like this, I feel like it's really behooves us to be able to see that. And I challenge the designers, and I know I think there's some folks in the attendance committee to to use your tools. I've got tools in our resources from where I work. So I would really like to see this park in 3D to be able to really understand how it's working.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, Joel.
Thank you, Grover. I don't know if Michael wanted to jump ahead of me, if he was going to respond to Ben or not, but I'd be happy to. If that's not the case, no problem. I was going to ride their coattails a little bit, both Ryan and Ben, as far as our role as a Parks Board here, and kind of echoing what Deborah and Anita have already said. At least as far as the three options that have been presented to us now, I would support that third option as well, and moving forward, keeping them kind of separated. I guess at this point, I just wanted to make sure that my opinion was stated for the record and included in the comments as well.
Thank you, Joel. Yes, Mike.
Thank you. I just wanted to have a chance to reply to Ben. Those are all the things that I know there's been some work done on the topography, the layout of the park as far as grading, because they've laid grades and stuff out. Really what we've been waiting to do is, before we engage on the rest of the fine details of the park design and the elements of the playground design, we've been waiting to find out which direction we're moving forward. There's a lot just kind of waiting in the wings with all the planning folks, just because there's a lot of differences between if it's separated or not. So all of that we will not be developing in a vacuum. I fully anticipate another full community engagement effort that will develop what are the key features that people want at the playground. What type of open area do they want? Park benches around? Do they want a meandering walkway? Do they want what are the community's desires? And I think I mentioned this in other task force combined meetings. I envision a very developed charrette type of process on both the park and the playground. That's part of my specialty, but we just can't we can't make those decisions yet until we figure out which direction we're moving forward and know kind of what that overall thing is, and then we can start taking the next step.
Sure, I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
So I'd like to take a turn, and not as the chair, but as a representative who this is my area, where Concord is and the like. I have always, in other meetings, not in ours, talked about, from my perspective, the park is the entire site, and that we have an opportunity for pathways all the way around the parking lot, around behind the buildings, etc. And I'd like to be able to have it be that way. And a lot of the design work, because I was on that task force, I did include that in most places. Until we do make it clear that the Concord building belongs to NCPRD solely, and they're going to do that solely, and we make the park be the part that connects the two, and then the library. What I've suggested in a number of previous meetings is that we swap the location of the kiddie area and the option 3 location of the library, so that the buildings don't have to be next to each other. They actually have a park in between them, and they both line up with the same parking lot. and there's a park in the middle. And I don't want to discuss that in great details, but for me, there is a lot more option in doing that. But it isn't accepting the current option 3 design for the library. It is they're going to have to redesign it if they move it anyway. They have not designed that to the level of that's needed. So I really am advocating for moving it along where Olive Avenue is and putting the kiddie area next to the building. And that's my comment as a area representative. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, there's summaries. Oh, Anita.
Well, I just noticed in the chat, somebody wanted to know if the Concord property would replace the Milwaukee Community Center. So I just want to make sure everybody knows, no way. It's going to be in addition to that.
And
Correct.
different programs and different functions out of there.
Yeah, and the good news is it will actually be a second community center or cultural center, as some people are trying to speak to, because it's not about sports or anyway, but be that may. That it'll be our second community center, which we've already built into the bylaws, et cetera, to be able to structure. So any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, time to move to the next agenda item. It says FY 22-23 budget planning update.
Sorry, I was on mute. We wanted to have the opportunity to just give you an idea of where we're at in the budget planning process. And so we submitted to you the budget schedule and in your packet. So you should be able to see that where we're at and what's upcoming. At your March meeting should be the first time that we'll be presenting our initial budget plans to you or recommendations to you. Even after March 9th, there's still a lot of motion with the county administrator and others fine tuning things. But by the March 9th meeting, we hope to have as much of a rolled up budget with budget projections and revenue projections and proposed expenditures as possible. So I won't go into any more detail unless anybody has a question about what's gone on so far.
Yes, please. I only want to know, because I've really appreciated the direction you're going, Mike, as far as rethinking how our budget looks on paper and how the different parts interact with each other and how one can trace from point A to point B. Is that being integrated in this?
Yeah, would you like me to just go over a brief explanation of how we're looking at rebuilding the budget book? Just a brief overview. You'll see it next month. But the general idea is we're trying to make it a easily understandable from a public perspective budget document. So we're going to be starting at top levels and discussing our overall general fund, our overall funds, and then we break down the general fund and we talk about the individual divisions within the general fund. So we'll have an overall discussion of recreation as a general division, but then we'll have further breakdowns so that you can see the aquatics operation, the sports operations, the programs operations, park maintenance versus facilities versus trails and natural areas, and really be able to hopefully put it together in a document that leads you along in an easy to follow budget narrative. So we're going to have different cover pages and some different statistical measures that we'll use in future. But it's hopefully just going to be a much easier to understand document for anybody looking at it. Still laying out the exact same budget numbers as what the budget book had before, just laid out in a different way. So you'll have your chance to see that first crack at it at next month's meeting.
Great, thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions about the upcoming budget? Seeing none. Next item, the grant submittal for Milwaukee Bay Park Metro Bond Trails funding. And is that a presentation or open for questions, or where are we on that?
It's going to be just a brief, I guess, introduction by Heather. Heather Cook, our asset development manager, is here to just let you know what this is and what we were looking at doing and why and how it plays into the bigger picture.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Grover. The Milwaukee Bay Park, we continue to look at bringing all our different partners together and funding the project. And the trolley trail is a very discrete piece of the park, but it also is very integrated. That means that we can look at other sources of funding that are specifically trail related to provide some very specific support for the trail component at the park. So we have begun completing the application package for a Metro Trails grant. It draws from the 2019 Metro Parks and Nature bond measure. It's a different pot of money than the local share money that you might have heard mentioned before. There's 5 discrete program areas of the bond. This is one of them. Essentially what we're doing is really trying to shore up work on the trail, so that can be one of the stellar components of the Milwaukee Bay Park project. But also we have a 6-mile trolley trail, and this is a gap that's very, very busy. It's a very major node, and it's got some concerns safety wise in terms of width and geometry, and there's also some potential issues that we can address regarding mitigating conflicts between park traffic and through traffic. So it's a really great opportunity to apply for this pot of money. We're going to the NCPRD board next week, so we wanted to keep you apprised. They approve large grant requests over 150,000, so we bring it to them to get their input and seek their approval before we submit. So that's our next step. It's a 1 point, this was in the packet, so I don't want to go through too many details, but it's a total of a $1.14 approximately $1 million proposal. It includes improving the length of the trail through the site. It's essentially a new alignment, and doing the ancillary work to make that connect with the park and with the crossings, and provide a few trail amenities like a drinking fountain and maybe some benches. Pretty straightforward stuff. And it includes a $624,000 request and a required match of 45%. So that's approximately $511,000. So what we're doing once again with this project, as we have to do with all our capital projects, is we're really working to leverage our local dollars and attract as much local, state, regional, federal funding as we can to make our local dollars go a lot further. So I guess with that, I can just let you know that the next step is the board. And if you guys have any comments or questions, this is a good time to take those, Chair.
And I would just clarify before comments and questions. What we're doing is we're taking a request to apply for the grant to the board. We haven't applied for the grant right now. We haven't been awarded the grant. We're putting in a request to apply for the grant as the board requires. And then if we were awarded the grant, then there would be the approval process to accept the award through both your advice up to the NCPRD board to accept the grant if we get it.
That's right. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, Ben.
So my understanding is that through the Metro bond, there's $52 million allocated for regional trails. The trolley trail is our only regional trail in the district. And does this grant, if we were to win this grant, would it help offset some of the other, but like, I don't know if it's local share or NCPRD contributions that were already targeted to go to this project?
No, it really fills out our funding package and allows us to essentially not have to dig quite so deeply into our own pocket, since we have limited funds for capital projects. So it's really trying to extend our reach with our partners through, partnering with their funding. But one clarification is that the money specifically for trails in the bond is 40 million, and they're setting aside 20 million for specific project acquisition, which this is not. And they're setting aside 20 for these regional projects where you're filling gaps and completing some trails. So each county's metro region can apply for so many grants between this and another pot of federal funds called regional flexible funds. So everyone's sort of applying at this time, and we're one of several projects regionally that will be competing. But we know we have, I think, a pretty competitive package of projects in Clackamas County. So we're looking forward to all competing for those funds.
And remembering that this is part of what has been in our Milwaukee Bay Park budget. It's in that unfigured out gap area that I think even has asterisks for future bonds and grants. So this is our efforts in trying to fill that gap that we already knew existed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anita. You're still muted. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, just because the topic is Metro local share money is one of the topics that just came up. And somebody brought it up at the last DAC meeting during the public comment. And my understanding is there was 4.5 million coming to NCPRD.
Mike, we can't hear you.
Yeah, different funds on it. We'll be discussing the Metro local share $4.5 million with you all. Is that next month or in April, Heather? I'm not quite sure.
I don't know that we have it specified yet.
Okay. And there's a public engagement process that we need to go over with you all and get in place before we figure that out. This is it's confusing because it's Metro in the title, but this is the Metro Trails part specifically for trails, separate from that pot of money.
Right. Well, I was going to ask about the DAC involvement and the public process. So you just said it's on the schedule.
It is. We are trying to get our staff rolled up into planning and development to give Heather some support so we can actually get some of these things moving forward. But it's a bit of a slog. If you've heard, it's kind of difficult in hiring staff. So we're making progress. But yes, there is a full public engagement process, DAC involvement up to the ultimate plan is at some point taking an IGA between NCPRD and Metro that specifies all or a portion of how that money will be spent based on eligibility.
Great, thank you. That's
Yep.
what I wondered.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
So how long will it take before you can actually get the money, assuming that things move along in a normal schedule? If you need the money to get started on like the Metro or the Milwaukee Bay Park and things, how long will that take?
You asking specifically about the trails funding?
No, the other funding. Oh, the trails funding too, yes.
Well, let me just address the trails since that's our agenda item. The trails funding, it's unlike other pieces of the bond, this is purely competitive. There's no predetermined, this locality gets this much, this locality gets this much. So we all compete for it. There's a pretty extensive process of review and assessment on the proposals. It's really rigorous, actually. And so Metro Council is slated to get all the way to a recommendation by October. So October is when we would know. We'd have some indications before that of how well it's been evaluated, but it wouldn't be signed and sealed until, as far as a decision, until October, and then we would pretty quickly develop the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement with Metro. The local share, I just want to be really brief because this will be a separate agenda item, but that has a process with Metro it's pretty prescribed. And we want to take you through that in our next meeting, but it'll be several months of engagement, project confirmation, and then development of the IGA with Metro. And we can give you more details on that when we cover that item. Thank you for asking.
Okay. I'd like to, as a representative, speak my thoughts and ask a couple of questions. I do remember that actually you, Heather, were part of a presentation January a year ago on the 19th regarding the funding, the other part of the funding to ODOT. But in it, I really appreciated the statements in here, and I only want to nudge to get it done. And I heard you just alluded to it there, so I just want to spell it out. because you all, and I don't know if you wrote the words, but you were one of the presenters, you actually talked about that that there's going to be a planning process to engage the public and develop an agreement on the Metro local share funds, the $4.5 million that Clackamas County people paid into Metro and now is coming back to Clackamas County. And the part that goes to NCPRD, the local folks will be included in determining the actual criteria for where the money's going to go. Is that what you alluded to, or did I read more into what you just said?
No, that as far as I'm understanding, let me just echo this back. Yes, we will have a community process. We have to do some legwork. We've talked with Metro about projects in the past, but we have more legwork to do in that area with Metro, and to make sure that we have a project list that they can at least nod to. And then once we have some possibilities, we're going to bring that to the community. And I still need to really work with the team on exactly what our ideal process is and how we can roll that out in an efficient manner. We definitely, needless to say, the DAC will definitely be involved, and we will be relying on you to really engage with your networks so that we can get a really good engagement for this. And again, something we can dive into a little bit more when that's an agenda item. But the trails funding, just to make sure I'm clear, is different, and it really is just a grant application like you'd apply for any grant. So very different process, but they are definitely related in that they both come from the bond that was passed in 2019.
Sure. I want to actually clarify the rest of the question, because what I was speaking to specifically is the establishing priorities process, and that part we covered. But now let's talk about the trails part. The trails part, so we don't have it yet, so we don't know what's going to, but the fact that it earmarks, and by the way, in the same presentation, there was discussion on the last page that talked about how for SDC funding, the same kind of criteria would be used to determine that. So when you look at the identified matching funds, they come from Zone 1, but when you look at the budget in specific, you can only see that the money is in the urban growth management area of Zone 1. And so I wanted to know how much the people who live in that urban growth boundary management area are being included in having $1 million of their money not go to a park and they are park deficient. They are clearly, you read the the comprehensive plan, you read lots of places, they are incredibly park deficient. And yet the only way they can buy parkland is to actually have money other than NCPRD general fund money, because that all goes for maintenance and operations. So these SDCs that were generated within their area are being considered to be matched to go outside of their immediate area. Yes, it's still in Zone 1, but the money wasn't generated in Milwaukee, it was generated in the sub area. So that's where my question lies. Will that process that was identified a year ago that we're going to do this outreach, was that included for both of those, both the local share as well as this grant?
I'm just going to ask Mike, because I saw his hand pop up. Mike, did you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Well, we just need to make the differentiation, and I think everybody's aware. We have 3 zones right now by ordinance passed by the NCPRD board. We have 3 zones, and we have a zonal SDC management. That is all defined by law and regulation on how it's collected, how it's distributed, and how it's used. So we don't make any spurious decisions on what's to use. Back when Zone 2, or when the Zone 1 UGMA was incorporated into Zone 1, it's not recognized in anything other than how we account for it as separate from Zone 1. It's Zone 1 money, just like Zone 2 and Zone 3 money. Now that may all change if we change our SDCs. As far as how the money is spent, again, we just assured you that we're going to be doing significant outreach as part of determining how this money should be developed. But again, it's not a laundry list to open up of, what does everybody want us to do? There's very, very specific criteria set forth by Metro on how these funds can be used. We can't go outside of those, because then Metro won't allow us to use the funds and they won't enter into an agreement. So there had already been a vetting process by staff for many months at least on which projects that were currently being worked on or had been thought about in the district would be eligible for this $4.5 million. One of the main projects that Metro identified as most aligning with their priorities was the Milwaukee Bay Park, and that's why that $3 million was put into there. Why $3 million? Well, there was some proportional amount of the amount of Metro money that the city of Milwaukee received. They gave a proportional amount, and our proportional, that $3 million is a proportional match. So there is a public engagement process, but I don't know that there's going to be projects that are currently being worked on that we could spend that money on that are going to be outside or that are still going to align with Metro's plan for how we can use that money. It's very, very specific on their criteria. So I just want to make sure that we're not setting out expectations that we can't match. We'll be doing a public engagement in the fact of we're going to send it out to all of our district contacts, interested parties, people that are on our list. We'll do a campaign that advertises that there's going to be discussion on the Metro Local Fund money and looking at priorities. And so that'll all happen, but we're not specifically going to the Zone 1 UGMA area and saying you get to choose how we're spending this. It's all one pot of money within Zone 1. It's not Zone 1 and Zone 1 UGMA. It's all Zone 1 money that's collected and that we've been using legally and properly since that combination happened back in 2015, I believe, or 2014.
Okay, I'm not actually suggesting, just to clarify, and then I'll move on. I'm not suggesting that we should open up to the public and say, well, okay, where do you want to spend the money? It was about setting a specific criteria of to establish priorities, and that part is from the public, and then we'll know what their public is. And I know we have not had time to do that. I'm just referring to something that was a year ago, talking that it was going to be done in the next 6 months, and a lot's happened in the next year. But I still want to be an advocate for that we have more community involvement in being able to set criteria for where we go. And I loved reading the notes, what Ryan had to say, and being an advocate for that we come up with a plan. And we're still working on it, but I just want to be an advocate that that's the direction we're going, is to have guidance that helps us determine, including the community. And that's it for me. Yes, Ben.
Going back to the agenda item about the trail and specifically Metro's pot of money for regional trails, not local shares, because that's what the discussion is about. I think it's a great idea, but I just want to touch on like some low-hanging fruit from the chat that Thelma mentioned about the Friends of the Trolley Trail, that they're looking for a striping project in the unincorporated area. And where is that on the priority list? And could that be incorporated into some of this trail ask? Because I imagine a little bit of paint doesn't cost a whole lot of money.
We've put in a earmark request specifically for trolley trail safety improvements.
Great.
We don't know how well that's going to go because we have an idea of who we're up against on competition for that. But in addition to that, nothing is set in stone again at this point. But I was just having the meetings today with Kevin about our capital repair and replacement budget, and I believe right now we've got quite a good chunk of money. I'm hesitant to say because now my mind questioned whether that number in my head was accurate, but several good chunks of money for specifically some striping, thermoplastic replacements, crossing improvements. It's not enough money to do the full lighting and safety striping and center line. It's not the full one that we've requested in the earmark request, but it would be enough to get us moving forward on several of those problematic areas along the rest of the trolley trail. Heather, I can take a crack at the overall, moving this. I don't in fact, I'll just turn it over to Heather. The eligibility of that funding being able to go beyond the Milwaukee Bay Park connection.
Yeah, it would be a pretty tough sell. They really want discrete projects, so spreading it along to kind of disparate improvements on the trail would not probably be super successful. That being said, that might be more successful with the earmark request, you know, again, not knowing that if we'll be successful with that either. But we are trying to create a solid, discrete project that really reads as like a whole kind of visible improvement. And we think that some of the striping and safety work, per Mike's question, is something we can accomplish with other funds. So rather than kind of, you know, make it a little confusing or fuzzy for the people who are reviewing these grants, we wanted to just be very clear. It's for this, it's in a confined area, it fills a gap, and doing the striping and some of the, you know, paving improvements is pretty different work. So we want to be able to parse that out. But I think your thought, Ben, is a really good one. We want to be able to bundle these things whenever possible. And if the source of funding allowed us to do that, we'd be throwing in all kinds of stuff, guaranteed. So I really appreciate that insight, because I think that is how you have to approach some funding sources.
Great. Any other comments, questions, or concerns about the submittal? Yes, Anita.
Oh, I just saw in the chat the question about the matching funds for this. From where in NCPRD's budget would the match come from?
From SDCs. So that 510,000 match is currently the way that we've got it figured to come from the zone SDC.
Any other thoughts, comments? All right, seeing none, moving to the next. Milwaukee Bay Park cost and funding update.
I will defer to Heather on this.
I hit my mute button and then I couldn't unmute myself. You think after 2 years I'd be good at this. Thank you. Milwaukee Bay Park funding and cost update. I'll cover the funding side first. As you know, we're applying for the grant if we have board support this coming week. So that's our first step besides actually submitting the application. We're continuing to talk with partners to see if there's any other ways to fill kind of our what we call our full funding package. So we continue to look at this. I mean, it's a regular endeavor to ensure that we can do as much as possible at the park. As far as the cost, the project team kicked off in January, so we're still reviewing the costs, and I'm talking about like literally hundreds of line items, just going one by one and questioning costs that came in different than the first estimate in 2019. Why they're different, really understanding how the revised estimate differs from the original cost estimate, because only then can we say, okay, this is a revised cost. And now we have to really point our design toward meeting the funding package based on the revised costs. So we're still heavily engaged in that work, but we're coming pretty close to finalizing that cost estimate. So I know that by March, we'll be in a good position to give you an update on that. And by then we will already be diving into some design strategies for adjusting to those costs. And at least at the beginning of the meeting, we had one of the city staff people that's on our project team. So we're partnering really closely with the city with every project team meeting so that they can also have visibility and ways that they can either give ideas about you know, cost improvements or design improvements, and keeping them, you know, in the loop for all of the funding discussions as well. So March will be the next update. We'll be moving toward a major design milestone in progressing the design. And so by the end of March, we will be bringing that out to the community for review. So we'll bring that to you all, but we'll also bring it to the greater community with some meetings that we need to get on the calendar in the community. And then after that, and then after that, we will be diving right back into design. So we're really on a very steady schedule of design, cost estimate review, design, cost estimate review. So we'll be presenting that to the community at the same time it will be submitting it for a revised cost estimate. And what we hope to achieve at that point is that with the revised design, we've come closer to meeting, lining up the design with the available funding based on the actual costs in 2022-23.
I had a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning, you're about to apply for the grant, and what grant was that? I missed that, or I misunderstood you.
Yeah, the Trails grant that the last agenda
Oh,
item.
okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Very good. Any comments or questions on the Milwaukee Bay Park funding that we haven't already talked about? Yes, Dave.
I just want to make sure I understood that you said design would be underway, and so by 2023, when construction would start on the park?
The current project
the-
schedule has us doing all permits and approvals through the beginning of end of 22, beginning of 23. And so we have some contractual steps, but as long as that all goes through, we would be starting construction in 2023. And the current projection for the construction schedule is roughly a year. So we've scheduled that all out for now, and then we'll be confirming that as we look at site conditions and look at the revised design.
Thanks. Any other things? I have a side comment I want to make. I keep noticing, and it's not set up for me to do what I'm doing and read the chat. Are things from the chat being relayed somewhere? I know they're being recorded, but are there things that need to be brought to the attention of the meeting? Because I can't do the meeting and read the chat. I'm just not qualified. So
You had read in your opening statements that we wouldn't be responding to comments here, that we were just collecting them and we would put them in our minutes. So I've tried to keep up on stuff, and it sounds like some people are answering others, but I haven't been looking over here.
okay, so is there anyone else from the staff that's watching that part of it? Because no. Okay. Yes, Ryan.
Michael, you're correct. So I did put in a request in the chat. I just would like to know if there's a point in our meeting where we could ask some more general questions. I have a couple of general questions I just want to ask some general questions, not anything project specific. Is that something we can do at the end?
I would imagine that would be in the commissioner or committee members' comments or.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any more comments or concerns or places to go in the Milwaukee Bay Park funding? Don't see any. Moving to the next point. Draft parking lot. Congrats. Happy to see that coming around. I know you've not had anything else to be doing.
No, and really, this has been a good exercise for staff to talk about, again, our transparency and visibility and ease of people figuring things out with us. And so when we had originally envisioned this draft parking lot, it was envisioned, and thank you, Anita and Grover. I know, I think David has sent in one before, but it was kind of envisioned of DAC members or members of the public would submit something and have it added on to this parking lot where we would plan things out for future agenda items. But what really came through is, even in the submissions that we were getting, about half of them were staff requests or questions that needed to be kind of vetted internally or were directed to staff. And half of them were things that could future be agenda items. So we needed to come up with a way to separate those and come up with a process. And that's the kind of flow chart after the examples that you see in your packet of how we handle requests, because I want to be able to make this much more than just about getting something on an agenda. This is really now turned into kind of a public kind of information request or request for development almost, because it could be anything, and I can use some examples that we had submitted in the packet. And all these were some examples, not everything that we've gotten. We just wanted to show you the types of things that would be in there. But as you see from the flow, we look at the request as it comes in, however it is. And if it's a staff request, we're going to route it internally to have somebody, either myself or somebody more specific, reach out. And so the example that I used for an internal request is Anita had sent in a request that had, and I can't, for some reason, my computer's not allowing me to pull it up, but how do we bring more multiculturalism into NCPRD? Was one of the requests. For something like that, that would be our first conversation, and we would have it with Anita and talk about what she envisioned in wanting to find that out, and also a chance for us to let her know what we're doing within our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee that meets on a regular basis, and future plans for cultural events, and even what we're doing internally to try and have diverse recruitments of our staff, things like that. So that it would generate the conversation. And then ultimately, if Anita wanted it to then be bumped up to a discussion to be had with the DAC with some specific topics or something, then it would get put onto that public part of the parking lot page that you would see with a potential future agenda date. Some of the requests that may come in are going to be just purely, hey, these just get routed directly to the public parking lot for future planning, and it doesn't go any further than that. Some of them are going to come in that it's just handled and we answer everybody's question and it doesn't go any further than that. But we wanted to develop a system that has a form that's easy for people to fill out and get to, and a process that's both responsive, timely, and really helps us vet an idea that might turn into future projects, or again, one that we have to respond to on it is seed bed development or seed gardens at the Concord site. Well, I want to find out more about that, and so it gives us that opportunity for engagement, whether it's the DAC putting the request in or anybody in the public putting that request in. We would follow the same process. And so the other page that you see in there is we have an internal projects working kind of ongoing projects list. We call it our PTNA list, our Parks, Trails, and Natural Areas list. And really, it's our kind of internal running list that we meet on a regular basis and talk about statuses of different things, whether it's future parks, whether it's individual, like a little zoning issue that we might be working on something or whatever. And so in an effort, again, for transparency, we are providing or suggesting in this draft a public version of that. It's the same list. We're just taking out people's names and individual properties or anything that's of a confidential nature, but it's the same list that we're working off of. So it gives the public a chance to see what are those daily things that we are just kind of always having in the background of what's going on, but pretty much for project based. All of these would be updated on a regular basis. And when you go to our website, Jessica, you may need to correct me if I get the name wrong. We're creating a separate web page that's called I think Useful Resources or something. When you click on that, that's Jessica, did I get that right?
Yeah, it's going to be helpful resources, and
It's
part of the regular DAC page that's currently up.
So on the regular DAC page, you'll hit the helpful resources, and it'll have the application or the submittal form for information. It'll have it'll have the parking lot lists that will have a revision, date and date identifier so people know how old it is. But our goal is anytime we have our PTNA meetings internally, we'll go and as quickly as possible update. As soon as we've got something that moves from an application onto the parking lot list, we'll update the list and just keep it. We imagine there's going to be revisions and changes and things that we haven't thought about already, and we're reactive and ready to make those adjustments as much on the fly as we can. But we wanted to get you something to at least let you see the structure and get feedback if you think there's a column missing or something's not clear in kind of the process flow. Ryan, you had
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, yeah, so technology is not my friend. So Michael, you bear with me. So, okay, this is actually what I was gonna ask you all about. Where we, like, what's the process for getting items on the agenda? It looks like there's a request form. There's several items that I've mentioned a few times and I haven't seen them on the agenda, so I'd like to actually request those. Now, do I do that through the form, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then well, I'll call Jessica. I'm just gonna bug you at some point about the parking lot stuff, okay?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay,
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me if you've got questions too, Ryan. We're all figuring this out together.
click, 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 click. I'm not good at that.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'd like to interject there, what I noticed from being part of the agendas, we have more stuff than we can get on an agenda. So if you're being neglected, it isn't because it's not personal. It's a matter of time, which really brings a conversation that we need to have at some point. Are we going to have longer meetings? Are we going to have more meetings, et cetera? But I'm not having that conversation right now. Yes, Anita.
Yeah, I don't know if you already said something about this, Michael, but I was thinking that I've just been sending my agenda submission ideas to Jessica, but I was thinking that instead of just doing that, maybe I should send them to everybody on the DAC so we all could see. I'd like to know what other people are submitting and I am not seeing those. So maybe we should all send it out to everybody when we submit that form to Jessica. What do you think?
My suggestion would be to hold off, because again, some of them are going to be things that people want to discuss just one-on-one or have a quick personal, because again, no matter what, once we put this process into place, you'll see those requests. They'll either come through as something that's on the public planning agenda list or something that we talked to you like, hey, we're adding that into our internal, and somebody will give you a call to set up a meeting.
So does everybody who's setting the agenda get to see all the submissions?
That's the other thing that we'll begin to do too, is when there's ones that to get put onto the agenda, we'll be bringing those to agenda setting, because I don't want to be putting the priorities of when we would see this as far, that's the chair and the vice chairs and your body's purview of, yeah, let's put it on next month, or let's hold off until, April or whatever it is.
Okay.
Great. Well, it's been in works and I'm happy to see it. And I certainly understand that there's been a couple other things going on. So thank you. Looking forward to see it. Oh, there we go. Hello, Joel.
Hey, Anita and Ryan's comments kind of just made me think a little bit about, at least in how we've been doing our agenda setting meetings. And just so, for example, there's not the feeling of you're spinning your wheels continuing to resubmit agenda topics. I know that this parking lot should categorize that a little easier as far as providing some feedback, but I think it'd be pretty easy for us to even do the quick courtesy of saying, acknowledging and letting them know that there's a delay in this for whatever reason, or, it's on the radar, but it would be frustrating to me as well if I kept sending something and just it disappeared in the ether, not knowing what happened to it. So maybe we can make a better effort on that going forward as well.
Yeah, and we're discussing internally the processing communication flow of once something's received, I would love for somebody, if they put their email address down, to be able to send them an acknowledgement of receipt. And then that way, that gives us that kind of communication line to let them know this has been talked about, or this has been finalized, or it's going to go on X, Y, or Z agenda. So.
All right, Anita, you're up again.
I hope I'm not just saying something that you already dealt with, Michael, but when people write into dac@ncprd.com, we don't have a formal system about whether we're going to respond to them or acknowledge it or whatever. I usually write back to people when I can fit it in. I used to do it reply all. Now I just do it to the person who wrote in. Do we want to have a formal system of what we do when we receive those emails?
That's really for the body to decide. I mean, for us, we keep all of those as part of public record.
Okay.
But they're most of the time they're in the nature of public comment that people are making to the DAC, and they're sent to the whole DAC body. So they've seen those. What we do with them beyond that, that would be difficult because the nature of some of the comments are, very specific to the DAC advisory function, not necessarily staff level function.
Anybody have any thoughts about it?
Well, since they're, I doubt if, we don't have a capacity limit, so could they all be included in this same useful resources? And it's just, you scroll through them by dates and you can look at them or not look at them, but at least they are available. I don't know that that's the solution, but for me, it makes sense. So that was my 2 cents on that. Yes, Joel.
I would just responding to Anita and kind of my opinion on what you were talking about. An option may be, as something comes in, if it's not a, say, for example, just testimony supporting or something like that. But if it's an item that they're trying to, that you're kind of vetting out, that seems like something should be addressed, take it upon yourself as a DAC member to even submit it as an agenda item. I mean, we all have the capability of doing that. We're all receiving these emails. So I am impressed. I do see you replying a lot, and it's I think it's terrific. And I also think the other step would potentially be submitting it as an agenda item as a DAC rep.
Okay, any more comments? Thank you all. Thanks for that work. Okay, next item is the draft annual report. Looked good.
All right, so I've got Melina DiFrancesco here, our marketing and communications coordinator, the mastermind behind previous annual reports that you've seen, but our new year in review that we have been promising looking different and being more functional. So I'll turn it over to Melina to just go over some of the highlights.
Great, thanks, Mike. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen now. Yeah, and let me know when you can see it. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm excited to be here and share this with everyone today. So just for context, so for the last 4 years, including this last fiscal year, NCPRD has produced an annual report to highlight the work of the district. The purpose of the report is to cover the events of the last fiscal year, provide highlights of successes and challenges, and as well as some key statistics. It's another way that we give residents and partners a comprehensive look at our wide range of services across all divisions. As you know, there have been a few changes from what we've done in the past. So previously it was a lovely booklet format that we printed, and then we also posted the PDF online. One thing we wanted to do moving forward was make it, have it primarily be online as a single scrolling digital format, more of a scrolling storytelling narrative, something that's mobile optimized, so it's friendly across all devices. Especially with today, so many people are working remotely. There's fewer opportunities to distribute printed reports. So just making sure it's optimized in that regard. There is also going to be a truncated printed piece that's in development just to, hand out at movies in the park and things like that, but a smaller folded version. The other thing is the name. Instead of annual report, we'd like to change it to year in review. And the URL will change accordingly with that as well. And the reason is because looking at the actual content, it's not like a data heavy 60-page document with charts and, like tables and charts. It really is looking back at all that we've accomplished in the past year. And with this new digital format, it seemed like a really good time to change the name. So I'm just going to quickly walk everyone through our online year in review, and then at the end, we welcome comments and feedback. Just a little note too that it's essentially complete, mostly, but there are still a few small tweaks we're doing here and there. The hope is to launch it in the next week or two. So again, all feedback is welcome. So At the top here, you can see that we have a nice little menu. And so if you click on any of these subjects, it will drop you down to that section of interest. Or there's the option to just scroll, and it's more of a storytelling, full narrative approach. So in this first part here, it starts off with an introduction and an overview video, which if you haven't had a chance to watch it, it's a lovely video. Feel free to watch it. I can play it if everyone hasn't seen it yet. But really, we wanted to use the narrative of the report to tell the story of the past year. What were the impacts of the pandemic? What were the impacts of the wildfire on Elk Rock Island? What are some of the things that we've encountered through the year, and how have we been able to adapt and overcome them, and what have we accomplished? So as you scroll down, it goes into all the different sections. We wanted to keep the design similar to the past printed report, just clean, easy to read, digestible, bright, and engaging with a lot of visuals and images. And so each section has its own introduction. For example, Parks and Trails speaks to the surge in park and trail use that we experienced during the pandemic. You keep scrolling, and we have these fun little icons that highlight different things that we've accomplished throughout the year. And so, you can scroll different ways. And then once you keep going, again, it just goes from subject to subject. So now we have the Elk Rock Island restoration, where we partnered with the city of Milwaukee to restore the burn site for Elk Rock Island. So it helps tell that story, and you can read more about our efforts here. I'm not going to spend much time on each section. I'm just going to cruise through here and just to give you a quick overview of the report or of the year in review. And then we go to the aquatic park. And again, it speaks to the fact that we were closed a good part of the fiscal year due to COVID, and what we did during that time, providing that transparency of, we actually spent time enhancing the site and getting safety protocols in place to open again. And then once we did open, here are some of the different, stats that happened in that time. Here's how many lap participants we had, how many swim team participants, increases in our lifeguard trainings as we tried to staff up again to open once more. So it tells that story. We also weave in, where possible, quotes and testimonials from residents for each section. And then you get down to recreation and sports. And again, we're speaking to how did we adapt during the pandemic when we weren't able to actually offer a lot of our programs in person. We had to adapt. We had to make a lot of our programs virtual and offer them through Zoom. And so what did that look like? How many new programs were there? We have stats here for customer satisfaction rates from our survey. So just really fun little details that kind of let you know what's been accomplished through the year, and just some highlights. Again, with another quote from a district resident. Then we get to the Milwaukee Center, and similar to the others, we cover the fact that, the facility was closed last year, but we still were able to continue on with our Meals on Wheels program through that entire time. We didn't miss a day, especially during a time when those meal deliveries were more important than ever to homebound adults and people who were quarantining. Again, with statistics that go along with that story, and another testimonial. Then you get down to volunteers, who are really the heart and soul of our operations. They're essential, and kind of the role that they played, how many hours, how many volunteers we had, so statistics to support that as well. And then you get down to events. Similar to everything else, there were absolutely impacts, and in addition to canceling a lot of our events, we had to adapt some and make them drive-through or make them virtual, or create new events altogether. For example, Boo Bash, which, a lot of families weren't able to trick or treat that year. And so providing opportunities for them to still have a family-friendly event to go to. Similarly, there's, different fun statistics here, virtual visit with Santa, things like that, that it tells you how many people attended. Another testimonial, and then photos that you can scroll through from all our different events, which is really fun to kind of look through all of those. And then you get down a little further and you'll see different project highlights. So we cover the new park at Boardman Wetlands, still, without a name, but just to call it the park for now, the park at Boardman Wetlands. With just a brief overview, it opened that year officially to the public during a time when people needed it the most, and keeping it pretty brief, but with a link to the project page if people want more information. And again, photos with the new park that people can scroll through to just see it, because it's such a beautiful, great site. And then similarly with Milwaukee Bay Park and Concord, providing just an update of here's what happened that fiscal year. Here are some little key tidbits that occurred, but really driving people to learn more on the actual project pages if they want to learn more about it. It's really just a quick update on here's what happened that fiscal year. And then we get to the financial information. And again, similar to our past reports, it really is a snapshot of our finances. And so that includes, revenue by source, and it includes expenditures by division, with the option, if somebody really wants to sink their teeth into budget information, they can click through to the budget documents and kind of peruse those, but just to provide that snapshot of revenue and expenditures. And then you scroll down and you have a thank you and just different ways to stay engaged with the district through social media and subscribing to our newsletter. So that is the new online version of our year-end review. So I'm going to stop and open it up and see if anyone has comments, questions, feedback. Anita.
I just want to say that over the period of time I've been connected to NCPRD, I've enjoyed the graphic design quality, and I've been curious about, is that for all of Clackamas County, or does NCPRD have its own graphic design department? Because it's very comfortable visually, and I love all the sans serif typefaces and just the colors and the layout and everything.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. We have an in-house designer who's part-time, who helps with a lot of our design work. This particular online piece was a combination. I built it out and the design, and we also have an agency that we use for illustration. And so the agency helped design all the little icons. So those are custom illustrated. So it was a joint effort by many people.
And Melina's being modest, but she is very much got the pulse and has created a lot of our branding and presence and marketing campaigns. So don't let her undersell herself. She's amazing, and we're so happy to have her.
Thank you.
Okay. Desi, is your hand up? You're at the top, so I don't see the hand, but.
It's there. First of all, the website's really user-friendly. I like the format of it and how you can scroll through it. It's right on. Second, why didn't you use a picture of me swimming?
We can arrange a photo shoot, Desi. Yeah, I'm always meeting models.
No. Nobody needs to see that. Nobody needs to see that. And I just wonder about translation. Is there a way that folks is there a button that will take folks to, a translation website so they could read it as well?
Yeah, that is something that we're looking into incorporating and need to make sure it's possible. This is on a microsite. Our website right now does not have that capacity. And in the near future, we are looking to totally redesign our website so that it does. It's long overdue, and it's something we're going to look into. But in terms of our annual report, we are trying to make that happen, but it really just comes down to the functionality of the site. So can I get back to you on that and on whether it's actually going to officially happen?
Yeah. And I'm guessing it might be easier digitally than printing a bunch in multiple languages.
Yeah.
And then get back to me about the photo shoot.
Okay, yeah, I will. Thanks.
Thank you, Desi. Now, Joel.
Thank you. I've just got this image. It's like a really weird swimsuit issue with Desi on the cover now for some reason. Sorry, Desi, but outstanding, Elena. It really does look terrific. And I'm really, I mentioned this when we talked about it briefly last time. I'm really glad that it's gone to a mostly digital format. I know that there's going to be some, like you said, some printed versions, but it really does look terrific and it looks very user friendly. I apologize in advance for being that guy, but the only thing I would comment about, and I still find myself making this error, is perhaps the Milwaukee Center could be the Milwaukee Community Center, at the risk of totally throwing off the size and scale of the navigation bar. I think that's actually the case on the district website still as well. But again, my apologies for even saying that, but other than that, it really does look fantastic. Great work.
Yeah, no, don't apologize. And I would actually really love to get your feedback on this, because we had it as Milwaukee Community Center, and there was internal debate about, because it was a fiscal year prior to the name change, what do? We opted for Milwaukee Center because of that, because in the next year in review, we're going to be like, we changed the name of the Milwaukee Center.
No, that's a terrific point. I didn't even think of, I think in my head, I've tried to start changing over in my own brain for the past 2 years. But that makes that's an excellent point. I do know, again, and I know this is kind of a little off topic, I do know that it is still listed as Milwaukee Center on the district website navigation bar, but I would agree with you there that that'd be more representative the way it is. Thanks.
We'll get the website changed. Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, the name is so long that it's updated everywhere else except the navigation bar, because it's like, how does that fit? So we'll get back to you on that as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ryan.
Yeah, I just want to add floaties to Desi, like little floaties. I think that would be adorable. Melina, this is amazing. And I just want you, we rarely congratulate staff on the hard work they do. And I get to do that now. I'm a staff in another agency and I get to do that. And I just want to give kudos to the sheer amount of work that the district staff do and the quality of work. And I know like it isn't easy. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of barriers, and you should give yourself even more credit. And please let everybody know that we really do. Well, I do. I think we all do really appreciate everybody's work. So that's it. Kudos.
Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Cool. Any other comments? Great job. It looks really good. Oh, there we go. Deborah.
I just want to add my congratulations. And the thing that I really liked about the new way that this is presented is it gives you the opportunity to click on various links and to go deeper and deeper into more specific areas that you're interested in. And I think that's a real plus. But I think it was a great job.
Thank you, Deborah.
Cool. Any other comments? So thank you very much. And we'll move to the next item, which brings us to public comment. So we will now open the public comment portion of our meeting. And if you would like to provide public comment, please select the raise hand feature. And what I'd like to get some feedback from someone on staff, how many hands do we have so we can make a decision as to where we are on time. It's currently 6 minutes after, so we'll be on time if we're done in the next 24 minutes. So who has a count for how many hands are up?
Right now, there are 2 hands up. Lindsay Freeman is first, followed by Thelma Hagenmiller.
Okay. And my invitation to those out there is if you do wish to speak, please do put your hand up so we can accommodate. Did any more go up? That was
Nope.
my pitch. That was my pitch. God, it
No,
was
just-
such an inviting pitch.
Just those two for right now.
Okay. Well, then, given that we don't have a time constraint, the standard model is 3 minute per person. And please request that your focus be on topics that are related to the District Advisory Committee and our agenda and things that the District Advisory Committee can address. And your submissions for public comment at the DAC that you put on the chat will be part of the public record as well. And I think I covered all the parts. So there's a hand. Lindsay, there you go.
Hello.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi. Hello, lovely members of the DAC and staff members and everybody else joining. Let me get my puppy who wants to be part of the meeting because she's crying. So, I'm just here to talk about Justice Park again. And, I don't have a good pulse on what most of the DAC understands or feels about justice property. Since we have a little bit more time tonight, I'll just take an extra minute than I usually would to talk a little bit about the history for those who don't know. It's a almost 3 acre parcel of property on 122nd right off Sunnyside Road. And it has been owned by North Clackamas Parks for 30 some odd years. And it's been in the master plan. It was even on the budget. And I don't know exactly why it never came to fruition. One of the reasons is because there's another parcel next to it. My understanding is that initially the Parks Department wanted to acquire that tract as well. But we don't need both tracts to have a really nice park. In fact, 3 acres is a really large amount of space when we're talking about a humble community park. So, there's no parks that I can walk to. My daughter and I are both disabled, and we really rely on nature spaces to be places that we can exercise, and we really rely on accessible ones. A lot of the bigger parks are extremely overwhelming and difficult for us to navigate. And we'd love to be able to go to a park that we don't have to walk to. I mean, that would be a huge privilege. I get that I'm asking for a lot here, but it also feels like not a lot since it's supposed to happen for the past 30 years. And there's a lot of apartments right in the area that don't really have much green space to access. So it's really important to me. I've started talking to a lot of my neighbors. Most of the ones that I've spoken to are really in support of this, especially the ones who live right next to it, which I was a little worried about, but they seem mostly in support. So I'm just here to say, how do we further this? How can we get this on more agendas? It's not fancy like, Concord or the Milwaukee Bay Park, and it doesn't need to be fancy. We just want a small park. And thank you so much for your time and consideration and helping this little justice property that has the coolest name. Like, could it be Justice Park? Just throw that out there. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lindsay. And for those who don't know Lindsay, she was very helpful back when we were forming the criteria for the DAC, et cetera. And she is a resident of Subarea 3. Thanks. Who's next?
So Grover, next we have Thelma Hagenmiller, and then Jan Carruthers has raised her hand.
Okay. Hello, Thelma. Nice to see you. I like your hairdo. You're muted, Thelma. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have 2 things that I want to ask. And that probably Michael is going to have to be the person I address it to. I'd like to know what's going on at the Parks District to preserve the money that Karen Powers got for us for the Concord Project. And that money has a deadline on it. And are we going to be able to use it or not? That's one of my questions. And the other one is what's going on with the Parks District in Clackamas school that you inherited in the park swap with the school district? Is there any plans there? Because as I understand it, that would make a great gym facility instead of trying to cram a gym into Concord that doesn't fit. Those are my two questions.
Sure. And the first one, I honestly, I don't want to answer that because I'm not sure of the answer. I don't know if there's anybody on staff that's on and listening can give an update.
For which one, Mike?
For Thelma's first question.
The Carn
Power.
The Carn
Power.
As far as I'm aware, if there was money, that may be part of the library contribution, but I don't think that there's any of that that's come that's part of our Concord budget.
According to Karen's own statement, it was for the Concord Project. She didn't specify library or community center or gymnasium or anything. She just specified it was for the Concord Project, and it's got a deadline on it, 2023, some like August of 23, I believe. And it's considerable amount of money.
I'll have to get back with you on that, Thelma. I've been wanting to have a meet and greet with you anyways, and maybe I can get information and we can set something up to chat.
Okay, that's fine.
On the second one though, the Clackamas school property. So right now there's currently a charter school in the property that we've just done a lease extension for another year on, but they know that the clock is ticking, that really we can't do any development on the property until they have found an alternative location and can get moved over there, and we're being patient with them. There was a plan developed when we acquired the property to, I believe, and Heather, you probably have more on this, but to summarize, I believe it was knocking down the old school and turning it into more of a fitness type of place with a gym, or maybe it was remodeling the existing. I can't remember on that. But then also in that plan was a planned location for our new maintenance shed. Right now we pay somebody to lease maintenance property. Leases are going up, and if we have land to put our own maintenance building on, that makes more sense. But with that said, there's also been interest still from other county administrator potential interest or others, that maybe there's a future for other things for that property to be done with. So there's nothing decided right now. That's something that we're diving into as we're developing budgets for what we're spending money on for next year as far as capital expenditures and things like that. But there's nothing definitive on it at this point, because that school is still there and has through now, I believe, at least the end of 2023. And Candy, maybe, I can't remember if it was 23 or 24, but we just extended them for another year to give them time, because they've been unsuccessful in their searches for finding alternative school location.
The other thing that I would like to say is that has any consideration ever been given to talking to the people that own the athletic club on McLaughlin, Eastside Athletic, because they're right next to your Boardman Wetlands Park, and they've got gymnasiums and workout rooms and swimming pool and all of the things that compose a sports center. And the owner, one of the owners, has approached me about asking for some negotiation or talk to go on between the Parks District and themselves.
Yes, I am aware of that, and what I can say right now is I'm meeting with folks about that as a potential plan, but there's nothing firm on that right now.
Okay, well, I just wanted everybody else to know that that was in the works out there because it's been kind of under the table.
Thank you, Thelma. Who's next?
Grover, I had my hand up. I just wanted to, maybe you all saw it. I know we weren't going to necessarily jump out of the chats, but did you see Gary actually did address Thelma's first question there with regards to Representative Powers' financial or money? So.
Okay, I didn't see it either. So what does it say?
Sorry, it says that Representative Powers' funds are for the Concord Project, and we will meet the state deadline to spend these funds.
Okay, great.
Sorry, last hand up right now is Jan Carruthers.
Hi there, thank you. Couple of questions that are process questions just to be updated. The first one is the DAC at this time has had this discussion about separating the libraries, focusing on the park and the center. I know that there's an informational meeting for the library tomorrow. And then what happens? Do you take recommendations to a third meeting? I mean, a group meeting of all of the project leaders and then go to the board? Or do you have to meet again in March to have a recommendation to the board vis-a-vis what Paul Savas said, needing to speak in one voice? That's regarding the Concord Project. That's the first one. The second one is if we had, if NCPRD, vis-a-vis what Mike said last meeting, his preference would be to be able to use the Concord Center, I mean the building now, move into it and then work around that building. How much earthquake mitigation do you feel needs to happen for you to effectively operate in that building?
So the second question is that the building is habitable. It wasn't shut down because there were earthquake dangers. It was shut down because the school district at the time didn't want to invest the money to improve the earthquake mitigation to the level of a elementary school. But all of the reports that I've gotten, and I have people in the audience that may be able to explain this better, but there's no danger. With that said, we still want to make seismic improvements, but they can be made as we make improvements to the building. So as we work on an area, we can make seismic upgrades to that area, and as we go through. We're also looking at options for a maybe a more holistic approach, but less invasive than the complete gutting of the building and rebuilding, using things like roof truss tie-ins and things like that. So we're exploring different options, but in general, the building is occupiable. We've been running programs out of there since we acquired the building. There's currently ongoing recreation programs and rentals that go out of that building on a weekly basis.
Okay. The other one is a process question. I think probably maybe Grover, you could answer that. What happens next with you all vis-a-vis your recommendations?
Well, there was a discussion earlier on and it was a request specifically included in the comments from the January 20th meeting, which is that after each of, and there were no public comments during that meeting, after each of the 3 representative groups have had a chance to meet, that group would like to meet again in total. And that would give us a chance to, we've all done homework, we've had times to, in breakouts, if you will, and then come back and have a good meaty conversation about what we found and where we are and see what kind of synergistic process we could come up with to come up with an answer. So that there have been a number of requests for that. So I'm in favor of that, and we'll see how we can get from point A to point B.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other hands up?
No, there are not.
Okey doke. This completes the public comment portion of our meeting, and now it's time for DAC member reports. Who would like to be first? There you go, Joel.
Well, I'll make a quick one. Just wanted to let everyone know that we're pleased to announce our community advisory board to the Milwaukee Community Center is now fully is full. We have all of our appointments with at least one representative from every sub area. And also wanted to encourage everyone. I know Milena was also instrumental in retooling our newsletter, and it's now the Milwaukee Community Center Connection. And that is available in a digital format as well. It's beautiful, and I'll even drop the link into the chat. Encourage you all to check it out, but very exciting stuff for us. So thank you very much for your work on that as well, Melina.
Thank you, Joel. Anita.
Yeah, I recently went to a historic downtown Oak Grove meeting, which is about this little area on Oak Grove Boulevard where the trolley trail crosses it. And what came up was the new urban high school park idea, because it was going on some years ago and then it stalled, and there's talk about maybe reviving it. And I think it came up in our packet. So I just want to say one thing about that. When Scott Archer was directing, there was some verbal agreements, and the way that community members remember those agreements, which never got to a contract level, was that the NCPRD would actually acquire the land so that it could be a park separate from the school that the public would have access to all the time. And that's different than the usual sort of standard model where you share a park with a school and the school uses it during school hours and the public uses it after hours. And so what various members of this community would like to find out is what is in Scott Archer's notes about this, to see if there was going to be a plan to acquire it or if it would be a shared park with the school. So I'm just putting in a request for that.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Anita. And I'd like to speak to being in one of the 3 sub areas that actually will have, between now and the end of the fiscal year, the opportunity to reach out to our sub area residents and work through the process of a nominating committee, much like we did to get several of us onto this body. And we need to let it be known that applications they will be accepted the same way they always have been, which is they're submitted through the Clackamas County web system, and they go to PGA, and then there's a whole process that's been outlined. We've talked about that. So it's time to get moving on that, because we're well into February, and the intent is to have, like we did a year ago, have the 2 meetings be in late April, early May, and then the other one would follow 2 to 3 weeks later, and then they could be done, and then be in time to then submit the recommendations to the governing board for appointing. And there are 4 potential vacancies available. 2 are actually vacant, and the other 2 are up for renewal or refilling. So I just want to have people be aware of that, and I'm looking forward to some support. I don't know who to best talk to, but I am, as a representative from Sub-Area 1, but also as a member of the citizen initiation, or whatever we called ourselves. Anyway, the volunteer team, and there's a whole bunch of us, case in point. Lindsay was and is one of those members. How do we and who do we check in with the BC, with the DAC, and with PGA to kick that off? So who would I talk to?
Well, you can work through us to get things scheduled at PGA on what they're going to need and schedule and how to get it onto their public schedule. We can have that meeting with us or invite you to a meeting. But we're willing to take that on to help get things scheduled. The actual
Thanks.
running of the runnings of the meetings and stuff like that, that would be led by you all.
Correct.
But yeah, we can certainly do that. When would you like to do that, Grover?
Can I talk? I'm really in this Concord
Yeah.
stuff right now. So in a week, I'd like to check
Sure.
in with you.
Yeah, we'll connect. No worries.
Okay, good. Thank you. Who's next? Okay, there you go. I can see your hand. Desi.
Yeah, I have a question about the when people apply in the interview process for these vacant seats. What's that look like, and who's a part of being on those interviews and thing?
Sure. The way it's outlined, and you'd be happy to, I mean, if you want, it's documented. It was approved by the Board of County Commissioners in February a year ago. But the process basically is we put together a town hall, a meeting and whatnot of the sub areas that are in unincorporated. And we have people in each of the 4 sub areas. In this particular case, there are no vacancies coming up in sub area 2, but that doesn't mean they're excluded from participating in the process. We have some general overview work to talk about updates from the perspective of people in the unincorporated in the first meeting, and clarity about when the next meeting is going to be and what the process is. And then we do breakouts on Zoom, so each of the sub areas can talk amongst themselves about their strategy between the first meeting and the second meeting. In the second meeting, by then the applications, and we will be keeping tabs like we did before with PGA, so we'll know how many applications have come in each of the areas and areas that need particular focus and attention. And then in the second meeting, there'll be an opportunity again for overall conversation, and then break into the individual sub area breakouts. And it's a process to have the candidates introduce themselves, give their 1 minute, 2 minute stump speech, and then deal with questions. And then there's a polling or vote process. And then the two, in one place, it'll be the 2 leading candidates, and the other, it'll be a 1 leading candidate. And the other 2 sub areas will then become the nominated to be then submitted to the Board of County Commissioners as the governing board to be appointed. Did that answer your question?
Yes and no.
Well, what else would you like to know?
I mean, so we'll discuss it as a group, right? Is that what I hear you saying? And then we'll nominate the folks that we think best. We'll nominate them, put them forward to the board, the BCC, and then they'll.
Right. I just need to clarify when you use the word we, because in truth, it is each of the sub areas will be the group that is the nominating committee for their sub area, and they are the ones who then will select the candidates from the candidates that are generated. So each sub area individually there's a sub area 1, which I'm in, and then there's sub area 3, and then there's sub area 4, each of which have candidates openings. And so each of those sub areas, the residents of those sub areas would be the we's in each of those. So I don't get to talk about what goes on in sub area 3 or sub area 4, but I certainly have a conversation in sub area 1. Is that company?
Well, so looking at, so there are 2 vacancies in sub area 3.
Correct.
So then who will be discussing? Like, are we getting citizens from sub area 3 to talk?
Yes, when we did this whole process a year ago, and it worked quite well. We had good attendance, a lot of rich conversation, interactions, people talking about their dreams, hopes, and wishes for their sub area as being a part of the whole district. So it's a citizen-driven process, because it is the citizens, or I'm not supposed to use the word citizens. Okay, so the resident-driven process, and the residents will be the ones who choose who they want their representatives to be.
So I'm just, can you clarify how do those residents get chosen to be a part of that group?
It's,
Because
that's up to the wonderful help of the NCPRD PR people and the PGA PR people. They advertise, they put stuff up in various parks within the 4 sub areas to let people know the meetings are coming. They post it on Facebook. Melinda, you want to help me with that? What kinds of things? You guys did a great job last year.
Thank you. Yeah, we usually create a suite of materials. So there's flyers, there's A-frames that go in the parks, there's boosted social media campaigns. I know PGA does extensive outreach too to the different CPOs. So I think it's just a suite of materials that go out. But you know, if you guys have recommendations or ideas too, please share them because we can always expand on those efforts.
Great, thank you. And it really is, just to go back to the whole concept, and this is why the BCC governing board gave the assignment originally, was to design a process to keep growing the outreach. The model that I want to keep going back to, and I've given kudos to Milwaukee a number of times, but in the early 90s, there were 5 neighborhood sub-area advisory boards, Parks and Rec, and those 5 are down to, the only surviving one is the one in Milwaukee. And this is a process to generate over the next several years to work our way back to that, so that in each 20% of the NCPRD population, there is an opportunity for people to have a direct access, to be able to speak, to express their concerns and whatnot in a local environment that then gets relayed into DAC and NCPRD business. Did that help any?
well, I have some more questions. But,
Sure. Would you like to contact me? I'd be happy to tell you all about it or give you with materials to look at.
Yeah.
But it is not a Milwaukee. You guys chose a different way of selecting your representative.
No. I'm just,
Okay.
yeah. I have more questions and I don't want to take up any more time.
Okay, good.
So
Thanks, Desi.
I'll get in touch with you.
Please do. Yes, Joel, and thank you. Yes, Joel.
Actually, Desi's question kind of made me think about this, and looking forward, even the idea of, God willing, we're going to start meeting in person at some point in the future.
Yes.
But one of the limitations of the current selection process seems to be that it's reliant on online format only. I don't know, unless I missed something, I don't know if there's any system for selection that doesn't include online only, which, I mean, there's a host of limitations with that. I know some are out of our control, but certainly language barriers, things like that, obviously, but or access. But I mean, I'm kind of thinking as I'm talking here, but it does bring up a point that I think is worth addressing, certainly in these selection processes the sub areas are relying on, that, I mean, gosh, hopefully in the near future, we'll have in-person opportunities. And what would be, and I'm not asking you necessarily, Grover, to spitball an answer here, but what would be the in-person process for selecting representatives of the DAC that would be more inclusive to everyone and more equitable for everyone to have access to? Because I think right now I understand it's limited to online, but hopefully those limitations will be a thing of the past here in the future.
Yes, and it's not a spitball answer, so, but I do want to address it because I had a lot to do with and still do. We're all restricted for this. That you can't be in this DAC meeting unless you have access, and it's all in English. So I clearly appreciate your point of view and look forward to that. The strategy that we have laid out, COVID did not cooperate, but if we could look at in the warmer months, that would be May through September. That's 5 meetings, and we could have, much like that one meeting we had at the Milwaukee Center, we could have in each of the 5 sub areas, we could have one of our meetings live with people there, and we would focus on issues or concerns from the population. You wouldn't be excluded, but the idea was, but weather would be nice and no COVID would be nice, but that's already part of the master plan that we have to do it. We're just not, we can't get out of this Zoom box romper room thing. Thank you.
Well, no,
Yeah.
so hang on, Grover, I've got a follow-up then because if that's the explanation, I guess but the process by selection is breakout rooms. And so how would selection process work in person under a canopy at, say, North Clackamas Park, like we had our one meeting? People wouldn't go huddle in one corner of the park, I would imagine. I mean, is that, again, I'm not asking for the answer right now, but I think that there's some basic format issues that probably should be addressed there.
Sure, but if it was in person, case in point, we actually could have the people from that sub area, because it would be specializing their sub area in one meeting, and then the next sub area in the next meeting, and then that sub area in the. So we're doing this all together because the only focus we have is Zoom, and the idea is to keep building the level of participation. But if we can't do the one in Milwaukee Center because you guys do it differently, but the one in sub area 2 in Anita's section, they actually could then have a breakout, just like they do. And do you know what C4 is? That's every agency within Clackamas County participates in a meeting called C4.
I'm familiar. No, I understand what you're saying, Grover. And
well,
again,
they do caucus work in there all the time, is all I wanted to point to. They actually literally do a breakout to select their representatives. Thanks. Anything else? Joel? Okay. Yes, Ben.
Just real quickly, I just want to remind folks that either were at the table or aren't at the table from when we were briefly meeting before the DAC disbanded and came back again. There was a lot of interest and talk about, outreach and getting more BIPOC participation in this board, and what that meant. If, how important is that related to actually having a specific person in a zone? Just for example, the Milwaukee Park Board has a BIPOC participant that doesn't live in Milwaukee, that lives south of Milwaukee, but we really appreciate that voice at the table. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Melina, as you're going through the networks to push the message out. I know there's a large Spanish speaking population. My son goes to Spanish immersion. So there's a lot of diversity in the district that we don't necessarily see at the table. So that's all I got to add. No questions.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Yes, Ryan.
Yeah, I just see, I went through the last process. That's how I got on. And it was a very interesting process. I think this is a perfect topic of that I think the DAC should focus on and invest some time in, is how do we refine that so it is a truly as democratic as possible and include as many different demographics as possible. I know there were limitations to the last one, COVID, all this stuff. So I think this is something valuable to invest in, even if it's not for this next round, but that we continue to focus on refining the quality of our democratic outreach.
Thank you for that. And by the way, I just noticed in the chat, even though I don't get to see it all the time, but it was in front of your picture. Lindsay did say we do have outreach material in multiple languages. So, but I agree with you. There's so much room to go in that direction. And thank you. I look forward to being out of COVID and being able to grow in that area. Any other comments under the DAC member report? Okay, I'll acknowledge we are now over time by 10 minutes. The next so we can quit, or we can do the district monthly report, which is what I'd be in favor of, but unless somebody needs to go. All right. Didn't hear any concerns, please press on, and thank you all for your member reports.
And I'll try and be brief on this. Again, we prepared our monthly report, and if anybody has any questions about the contents of that, the only thing I wanted to talk about outside of that report was to thank the 3 members of the DAC that were able to attend the first Herons public art project that was presented. And just to give you a quick update of kind of where things are at, the intent is that that project's moving forward as really mostly being led by City of Milwaukee. The Confederated Tribes contacted City of Milwaukee. We're coming in as a partner what we're envisioning in the process is a three agency intergovernmental agreement between Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, the City of Milwaukee, and NCPRD to put those art installations in place, depending on timing, ideally as part of the development of the project, but depends on when things progress, that'll still get determined. But staff were fully in support of it. I think this is an amazing opportunity for the district, not only to get some amazing public art in a park that we're in getting ready to develop, but just the relationship building between us and the Confederated Tribes and the City of Milwaukee as this kind of triad IGA that we're looking at putting together. So that's the only other thing I wanted to add on, was to thank the three members that were able to attend. If you were not able to attend, we did send out a link to that meeting. So if you have not had a chance to see that, I would highly recommend it. To me, it's very, very inspiring. I get goosebumps every time I think about the cool story of how that's all, going to play out, as far as the, why they're there and what that means. I mean, that's just, to me, that's amazing. And I just feel lucky to be a very, very small part of it. So other than that, are there any questions on the district monthly overall reports?
No, thank you for having me be so thorough. I appreciated it. Okay. I don't see any questions from anyone. Future dates. The March agenda submission deadline is Wednesday, the 16th, 5 p.m. Next agenda setting meeting is February 22nd. The next DAC meeting will be March 9th. And the currently planned is the Boardman property naming process, the draft proposed budget, and the second quarter of the current year report. So anything else for the good of the order? Well, then we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Jessica, I sent you something already.